Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm Marc Givler. Got Kevin in with me here. It's been a minute. We were covering a playoff run, as you may have heard. May have heard the Buckeyes did win the national championship last month. So we've been quite busy with that. And so we got to get caught up on some stuff here and get back to a regular recruiting schedule. But I think the big topic right now, obviously, with the dead period, or with the calendar going into a dead period now for the rest of the month, the big topic right now is Ohio State's coaching changes and, of course, how that could impact the Buckeyes on the recruiting front. 3 openings as of the time we're recording this. We know this is fluid. We know we could hear news even before this is even posted on one of the 3 openings or more. But right now it's 3 openings, 2 coordinator positions, and offensive line coach. So, Kevin, I guess, first of all, you've followed the team for many years. You covered the team for many years, covered recruiting, pretty closely for many years. What do these things usually mean for a program? Especially when we're talking about, I think it's an important distinction to make here is that this is not a rebuild of a program where they just fired a 4-8 coach and all the coaches have scattered. This is a program that just won a national title and had 3 assistants take massive leaps, whether it be in pay, whatever it may be, especially Fry and Chip Kelly, who tripled his salary. Good for him. So Chip, if you want to sponsor the show at any point, we can have the Las Vegas Raiders sponsor this. You may, reach out to me. But, what does this mean, I think, in general for Ohio State? What's going to be the important factors here the next few weeks? What's on the agenda, I guess, for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes from a recruiting aspect?
There's a lot to unpack right there. Obviously, we just have to look at Nick Saban and what happened with his coaching tree at Alabama. You don't go after coaches that are on 5 and 7 type of teams. You go after the coaches who are the hot names. And Ohio State is, as you said, at this moment, has the 3 vacancies and, losing both of its coordinators. One already, is going to be in conference, so that's going to be interesting with Jim Knowles. But that is kind of the price you pay for being a top flight program. Let's not forget that in 2014, Ohio State's most recent national championship prior, Tom Herman had already accepted the Houston head coaching job at that point. There are pictures of him on the field post-game after wearing his Ohio State hat, wearing his UH hat. So and I'm even going to go back to 2002, and then I'll get into the recruiting aspect. I know I'm kind of getting off trail here. One of the most impressive things that I will say until the day I die about Jim Tressel is he was able to have as much success as he did and really did not lose many assistants along the way. So it leads me to believe that Jim Tressel did everything. So to do all of that kind of single-handedly, really, raises my thoughts on him. Not that they were ever low, but, so, to get back to now in terms of recruiting, we're doing a show as the time we're recording this 2 days before National Signing Day. We're not talking about National Signing Day. Fortunately for Ohio State, Hayes in the barn, class is signed. I mean, I guess guys could sue to get out of the class. I mean, if they really, were that, hurt or, disillusioned by all of that. But Ohio State also is, just won the national championship. So that's going to go a long way to fix things. I think Ohio State needs to be mindful in its pursuit. Now, if Ohio State decides to elevate Macchieri, then fine. You have your continuity, everything else. I don't think you necessarily have to drag it out. I would rather see, as an Ohio State person, I would rather see them take a little bit more time and get it right than race to get somebody in that position for fear of falling behind on Sam Greer or somebody like that. Sam Greer is an Ohioan. He's still, suddenly has not been moved out of the state of Ohio. I mean, yeah, maybe you're going to lose a little bit of momentum. That just happens. You got to be used to that. So, if Ohio State's going to get to the level of where everybody wants it to be, a perennial national champion, This isn't a 1-year exercise. I mean, coordinators for 25, if somehow they repeat and win again, they're going to be hot names too. So, look at Alabama, look at what Nick Saban had to do. I mean, even look at UGA losing Dan Lanning to Oregon after their national championship. It's just the way that it works.
Yeah, I mean, definitely this is part of what comes with the territory of being a top 5 program, of being a national champion, is your people are going to want your coaches. I actually think this happened. It's never ideal. There's no like great time for this to happen. I think from a recruiting standpoint, I think February is the month that most benefits Ohio State. Their entire class is signed. They aren't going after late signing period guys. They've got guys in the portal already signed and on campus. They've got, and these kids have no ability to make visits to other programs for like 4 more weeks. So it's not like while you're shuffling your staff around and trying to figure this out, that Sam Greer is going to be able to visit a bunch of, Penn State and Michigan and all these other contenders here over the next 4 weeks. His visits are done. I was at Florida State this past week, right before the dead period ended, or began. So Max Riley can't go visit Clemson the rest of this month. They are in a position now where it's going to be hard for teams to get some type of upper hand or upper edge here over the next month, because those teams cannot get these kids on campus. So that's what makes this an ideal time for Ohio State to have to go through something like this. Now, the key is going to also be Ryan Day reaching out to all these guys, Sam Greer, Max Riley, all the in-state linemen we talk about, a Champ Smith, especially down in Florida, who I think was especially a little bit upset with the news of Justin Fry leaving. He also had a good relationship with Mike Slynn, who went to UNLV, which Justin Fry's graduate assistant OL coach. So he's lost his 2 position guys. And like I said just a minute ago, he probably took this harder than most. So you get Ryan on the phone with him, and you say, hey, we're going to continue to build our relationship because I'm the head coach and I'm going to be here. And I'm also going to go out and find, I got Justin Fry here and he went off to the NFL. I'm going to find the next Justin Fry or whoever, the best offensive line coach I can find, however you want to phrase it. And you're going to be happy with who I hire, I promise. And they're going to immediately reach out to you, and we're going to immediately start getting that relationship fixed or repaired. And, Champ told me he's coming up in the spring, very likely coming up in the spring. He's working on that with his dad in terms of building out his spring visit schedule. But so that's kind of where Ryan Day's at right now, is he's got to be the bridge to the new hires. He's got to pick up the slack a little bit on recruiting, building relationships with these kids. In terms of impact, like here's my thing. And this is not to take shots on the way out, because I actually think all 3 of these guys did a really good job this year. But if we ranked Ohio State's recruiters 1 to 10 on the assistant coaches list, how far would we have to go before we got to one of these 3 guys?
7, 8. It could be 8, 9, 10. It could be 7, 9, 10.
Jim Knowles didn't recruit anybody. I can't think of one recruit that Jim Knowles was primary on that they've signed. I can't think of one. His job was to coordinate the defense, and the position coaches did the vast majority of the recruiting. And he would meet with kids on campus, and he would go to some high schools during the spring, but he was not heavily involved in recruiting. Justin Fry's issues with out-of-state recruiting are well documented. I would have him above Knowles and above Chip Kelly, who never really, they had Tavian St. Clair. He was helpful in getting Brady Edmonds, but as Brady Edmonds told me, he's a Buckeye no matter what, wishes Chip Kelly the best, but Brady Edmonds' decision went beyond that of playing in the Chip Kelly offense. So your coordinators were brought in to fix the offense and defense respectively, like coordinate the defense. These were not your top recruiters. And then Justin Fry was not really your top position coach recruiter by any means. So like you can replace these guys from a recruiting standpoint. I think the harder part is going to be replacing these guys from a schematics and just a teaching standpoint. I think Chip Kelly's a really brilliant offensive mind, and Justin Fry did a really good job with the O-line this year, and Jim Knowles obviously did a good job with the defense this year. So, like, that to me is going to be the bigger piece of this puzzle, and this is a recruiting podcast, so we're going to talk about recruiting. I don't think the recruiting impact here is going to be severe. Let's go down the list now. I mean, we can do this right now. I mean, obviously they have some hires to make, but like Brian Hartline, James Laurinaitis, Matt Guerrieri, Tim Walton, Larry Johnson, Carlos Lachlan. So there's 6.
The tight end, Keenan Bailey.
And Keenan Bailey, like, are the 3 that left, are any of those 3 better than any of those 7 at recruiting? I don't think they are.
I don't think so. I mean, there may be people who question Guerrieri because his name doesn't get mentioned enough, but
fine,
I do that at your own peril.
Single-handedly, not single-handed, but he salvaged Fahim Delane.
Right, but
they punted Perry Eliano right at crunch time for Fahim Delane, and I talked to Fahim about that. I've quoted him on the site before. Like, Fahim was like, "Yeah, Guerrieri was the first coach to reach out to me. He was right on top of it. As soon as he came in, I was the first recruit he talked to. Like, he has done a really good job with the safeties.
I just don't think he has the PR agent to sit there right now to push him as the recruiter or some of the other guys.
Right. So, but like, again, from a recruiting standpoint, this is all replaceable, fixable. This is not devastating to recruiting. And as I mentioned on the live show last night, they have 4 commits in 26. Like, 2 of them are receivers. They're not losing any receivers while Brian Hartline is still here. So there's 2 guys you're not losing. Like, you don't even have a quarterback yet. So to worry about like the offensive coordinator, you're still going through that shuffle. So there's a lot that's just not impacted by this from a recruiting standpoint. And again, if we were doing a show on schematics and X's and O's right now and on the team and everything else, which is for another different show, but we might be having a different discussion right now. But from a recruiting standpoint, I don't see where this is like devastating.
No, I think that the biggest thing is it's the uncertainty. It's the uncertainty. I'm going to let you in a little secret. Ohio State will hire coaches. They're not going to sit there and be like, "Nah, we're good with 7. We'll just figure it out at that point." They will hire coaches. Time will tell if they're the right hires or the wrong hires or whatever. But I can't necessarily say that. I have a huge file cabinet filled with bad Ryan Day hires. There were some that didn't work. We know that. I mean, do the same for Urban, the same for Tress, same for Coop. I mean, it happens. So I think the only loss right now on the recruiting front is just the uncertainty. Yes, we're in a dead period. People hear dead, they think that means that there's no contact. That's not exactly what a dead period means. I'll let Marc explain that situation after I give my thought here, but it's a case of you are not necessarily able, I think, to advance relationships with the position coach, because the head coach is all well and good, but you're going to spend more time with your position coach, and that's your ride or die guy right there. And one last point I'll make in here before Marc can jump in with what a dead period is that's why it's so important to have such a great personnel department. And the Marc Pantoni led personnel department that Ohio State has to get all these ducks in a row, to get Ryan Day pointed in the right direction, and limited hours of where you can do stuff. We need you to talk to this kid and this kid and this kid. All of that's very important too. And Ohio State has a tremendous infrastructure from Pantoni all the way down.
Yeah, and like the reality with the dead period is essentially, you can have phone calls, there can be phone communication, so they can talk on the phone with coaches, but you can't make any in-person contact. So coaches can't be on the road this month visiting high schools, and players cannot go to college campuses and visit with coaches. So the only communication really happening right now is via phone call. And yeah, you're losing some time on that. But, again, that's where Ryan Day helps you bridge the gap. And you go in and you tell these guys, look, we're going to have a hire soon. We'll let you know as soon as we do, and you're going to like it. It's going to be good. We're not going to bring in, some high school coach who's never coached college before. Like, we're going to have an experienced head offensive line coach or defensive coordinator, whatever it's going to be, who's either been here and been through the system, or we're bringing him in from the outside, from the NFL or from another big time program. Like, this is not going to be a nothing hire. So that's all Ryan Day can do right now, and just make sure you tell the guys he's there for them. I actually think, again, with the coordinators, I don't think anything's lost here, recruiting wise. Despite Justin Fry's maybe shortcomings as a recruiter, I do think that's where the area of concern is going to be right now with all these in-state guys, and with a guy like Champ Smith. I've talked to Max Riley. He wasn't like he was thrilled about the news, but he said, yeah, I'm going to give the new guy every chance. He's down in Ohio State and Clemson, so it's not ideal timing with him being down to 2 like that. But at the end of the day, I do think Max wants to end up at Ohio State. I think people around him would prefer him at Ohio State. And I think as long as the new O-line coach makes that a priority upon being announced, that I think that can be pretty easily fixable. Sam Greer was probably a little bit more upset, but Sam Greer said the same thing to me. Is like, I'm going to come back down and visit after the dead period's over and meet with the new coach and listen, hear him out. Greer seems a little further or a little less far along than Max Riley. Greer's a little more open right now. I still think that's going to be Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. We'll see. I mean, some other schools could sneak in there for sure, but those are the 3 I kind of look at with him right now. And he seems like maybe on a further timeline than Max Riley. And then you worry about the guys, some of the out-of-state guys. You can kind of reach out to them and make sure everything's good there. But
guys like that,
yeah. So like you just kind of have to. Again, you tell the guys this hire is going to be made relatively soon, and I'm sure there's plenty of good candidates out there that Ryan Day can say, hey, we got great candidates. We're going to find the best one, and you're gonna be happy with it. We promise we're going to hire someone you want to play for, and that's kind of how you leave it. And again, there's only about 2 weeks of this to go through, and it's a dead period. So this staff will be finalized 2-3 weeks, right? I mean, this is going to be 6 weeks. This is going to be 2 or 3 weeks probably. And this whole thing will be finalized unless there's another domino effect that would cause something. I guess we shouldn't quite say that after Bill O'Brien last year, but yeah, like this is not going to be like a super. It's going to be a blip on the timeline of a recruiting process, basically. So that's where that's going to stand. But again, I think just shoring up those offensive line relationships right now with Ryan Day is going to be important. And then you let the coordinators come in and kind of do their thing. If they're inside hires, if Brian Hartline gets elevated, if Matt Guerrieri gets elevated, whoever it might be, then those guys have an even bigger leg up because they've been in the program. So we'll see what they do. Again, I expect co-coordinators on both sides of the ball at this point, especially on defense. I think Matt Guerrieri is going to, again, at least be a co-coordinator, and then we'll see is he a co-coordinator learning further under a veteran they bring in to actually call the defense, or does Guerrieri call the defense and you bring in a veteran to support him in that? Because maybe that's the way to look at it, because Guerrieri has called a defense before, not at the level of Ohio State, but he's called it a Power 4 conference. So maybe you bring in an older guy or a more experienced guy to –
a Greg Madison type.
Yeah, to guide the situation versus come in and take over the defensive coordinator job. But we'll see what Ryan Day decides to do there. But I think Guerrieri's a good bet to be at least a co-coordinator on next year's staff. But yeah, other than that, like I said, it's a dead period. Like these kids can't. You're not going to see all of Ohio State's targets visiting Michigan and Penn State and Florida State and Miami and Oregon and Texas this month. They can't. So this is the time to have to go through this.
Well, as somebody said on the live show on Sunday night too, would have been better if this happened in December. No, it wouldn't have. I mean, because you were in a title chase at that point. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to
in the portal, and you were trying to figure out the portal too.
Right. I mean, there's no great time to lose both your coordinators and a assistant coach. But if we were to sit there and rank the months, I really don't know if there's anything. I think February is number 1 of the best month for that to happen in my power rankings of looking at the calendar based on, the recruiting aspects and, and to take it wider. I mean, you haven't really started spring ball. You may be in mat drills. You may be in some of this stuff because Ohio State's going to have to figure out some things. I mean, it's still going to be kind of a Ryan Day offense. I mean, you're going to have a play caller who's going to come in. You're not suddenly going to become single wing or anything like that just because of who you bring in. But defensively, they've got a lot of things to kind of decide. Ohio State is recruited as a 4-2-5 type of team. Do they make huge changes there? Do they go to more of like a 3-3-5? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has to be determined at that point. to Marc's earlier thing, I don't think this necessarily goes 6 weeks unless, a Bill O'Brien situation happens or something like that, to where somebody's here and they don't have the paint isn't even dry on the door, and something changes course. But I think it's a couple of weeks. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of names mentioned. I mean, I've heard Neil Brown's name mentioned on the offensive side. Obviously, Randy Bates.
I checked on that with the West Virginia source. They haven't heard anything on that, so I'm a little skeptical, but we'll see. I mean, it would make some sense. I don't have anything there concrete, unfortunately.
I haven't talked.
No, that's BS. But it was more of like I haven't heard that. So
his name was out there in the initial dump too. But the thing is that when hot boards come out, that's you're using logic. You're using logic. Right. You're looking at coaching trees and everything else. And then let's remember the Carlos Loughlin hire. It was a situation of where there were other names that were certainly mentioned. I think Ohio State ended up jelly up on that one. They did a great job with the Loughlin hire, but there were other names there. People are going to get raises and stuff, so you're going to have to follow that. In our internal text message, I sent out the USA Today assistant coach salary database. I'm like, I think we're going to have to use this a little bit coming up here with the 3 vacancies. But when it comes to recruiting, maybe things are going to take a little bit of a 20 or whatever in terms of breaking news or anything, but this is the time to happen.
Yeah, and like you said, you go through the 12 months. January, playoff run, transfer portal. December, playoff run, transfer portal. March, spring ball. April, spring ball. May, spring evaluation period. Coaches are on the road the first few weeks of the month, being able to evaluate kids in person, going down to Florida and Georgia, watching high school football practice, watching spring games. June, camps. July, you've already missed all of spring ball and summer workouts, and you're coming in hot right before fall camp starts, and you've got to install an offense or a defense. That's no good. Obviously, and then you get August to November. We know that's terrible. So
that's all the months, unless we've added.
That's all the months. That's 12 months. So we broke it down for you. We're not lying to you. We're not, doing this to this isn't Homer talk.
We're not placating you. We're not placating you. We're telling you the truth.
We just went through the months. Like, if you disagree with this, please let us know in the comments. But I would love for someone to present a better month than February after we just went through it like that. So I think this is the month to have to do it, and then we see what they do. And again, the key will be who they hire, how quickly that person's able to hit the ground running with recruiting. And like I mentioned, I guess this is the last thing I'll leave everyone with, because we're closing on 25 minutes here, and that's probably long enough to talk about this. But the last thing I would leave everyone with on my end, and I'll let Kevin give his final thoughts, is the next hire, whatever it is, coordinators, O-line, whatever, is going to have a fresh pair of eyeballs on this thing in some way, shape, or form. Even if it's an internal hire, it's going to be someone who maybe wasn't as high on the totem pole of the evaluation process, who will now have a bigger voice in that. So what that could mean is you could see them step away from guys Ohio State's been recruiting. Maybe he doesn't agree with Justin Fry, or maybe he doesn't agree with Jim Knowles on a linebacker or whoever. Maybe he doesn't agree with Chip Kelly on a quarterback in 2026. So they could step back from some guys. Almost certainly going to be some new targets. That's going to happen anyway. It's off-season evaluations are going to happen, film evaluations, and getting in the spring with spring evaluations. So new evaluations are going to happen that will slingshot some guys up the board. So that's all going to happen. Like we saw that last year with Carlos Loughlin. There were some overlapping targets between Alford and Loughlin. And if Tony Alford had stayed, I don't think they get Bo Jackson.
Do they pursue
Ryan Day essentially had ordered Tony Alford to recruit Bo Jackson, and I don't know that was actually going that well. And when Carlos Loughlin came in, Loughlin wanted Bo Jackson, so it was a very, very easy transition there with Ryan Day and Carlos Loughlin. We saw Loughlin kind of step away from some guys and go after Isaiah West. So, there are going to be new names that emerge, and maybe a name or two that falls off. Now, I think like Sam Greer, Max Ryan, those guys are probably pretty safe. But like out-of-state guys, you may see different things, guys coming and going in terms of the target list. So just look out for that as the hires are made in the first month or two. But Kevin, if you have any final thoughts.
I do, and not to take this show 10 minutes longer, but from a recruiting standpoint, I'm not as concerned about any of the 3 that have left there. I'm more concerned about Alan Clark leaving. Larry's guy. It looks like he's going to be taking an outside linebacker position with Texas. I mean, obviously shows, how highly thought of he was. He's somebody that I always thought could maybe be an heir apparent to Larry. I mean, that would be
Still
gigantic. Still could, gigantic footsteps, but it's not always the top line moves are the ones that are the ones you should be keeping an eye on. There's always going to be a lot of moves, and people are going to get plucked away, probably in the personnel department and things of that nature.
Yeah, and they have their GA tree, their little quality control GA tree, right below the one tier below all the position coaches, that has been gutted. I think they've lost 3 guys already. So they're going to have to replenish their AAA. Their whole pool of prospects in AAA just went to the big leagues for other at other programs. So they're going to have to replenish the.
They all got Rule 5.
Yeah. So they're going to have to. Yeah, they got Rule 5 quite a bit here. So they're going to have to replenish that. So that's something also to look forward to here, I guess, in the next month or two, is how sneaky they can get. They've made some good ones over the years. They really have. They've gotten some good guys out of the South. Lau and Clark's the last one they got, obviously now Texas, but they've done well with that over the years, getting guys in like that help them in recruiting. And so some of those guys have eventually turned into coaches here, full-time assistant coaches here. Keenan Bailey kind of started out that way. So sometimes you're able to keep them, sometimes they get poached, but so they gotta fix that as well. But we'll be here to cover all of it. So stay tuned here at BuckeyeHuddle.com and at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. I am going to turn off the $4.99 for your first month here pretty soon. I'm not threatening anybody. I'm just saying, we've been given the $4.99 for the first month at BuckeyeHuddle.com deal for a while now. A lot of people have taken advantage of it. We appreciate those people. We hope they're happy with that. I think we've had a lot of renewals off of it, and even some people have emailed me asking me to upgrade to annual. So that's been really successful for us. So take advantage of it. $4.99 for your first month. Probably only another week or so on that, and then I'm going to pull the plug on that. Kevin, how are we on championship confetti? Is there any left?
I think we have some left. Tom Orr is the one in charge of that. I have one little stash that I'm paying out to people that I know, friends, and even some site members that I said, I got you. But we're probably getting close. So with the end of the $4.99 deal coming up here soon, with there being a finite amount of confetti, this is really the time. I've had so many people here recently who are active members in all of our live shows. Are like, I finally made the plunge. I'm so happy that I did. You can sign up at any point, but why not now?
Why not get
discount at first and the opportunity to get confetti? I mean, why not? Come on, man.
We didn't go to Party City for their closeout bankruptcy sales. I promise. It's authentic national championship game confetti.
All of it picked up by the 3 of us. Yeah,
yes, gathered by our staff from the field at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So it's not.
We're not cutting it. We're not cutting it. This isn't. We're not putting sugar in the gas tank.
We're not adding a little fake confetti to it. No, this is 100% pure national championship confetti that we will send you free of charge. So get on that as well. But appreciate everyone. We're going to get back to a regular schedule on these. So appreciate everyone watching and listening, and we will talk to you again very soon.